The sun was burning above the small highway town and the air smelled like hot oil and dust. Marcus stood beside the open hood of an old truck, sweat rolling down his neck as he wiped his hands on a rag. He was a quiet man, tall, strong, and always focused on his work. People said he could make a dead engine breathe again. But few really noticed him, even though he was the best mechanic in town. His world was simple, fixing cars, going home to his wife Danielle, and sleeping just enough to start again the next day. He never looked for trouble, never spoke more than he needed to. That day started like any other. The radio played low country music in the corner of the garage. His boss, Mr. Clark, was in the office counting bills and drinking cheap coffee. Everything was peaceful until the sound of motorcycles broke the air. Loud, deep, and rough. Everyone in the garage froze. The noise came closer like thunder rolling across the road. Marcus looked up and saw a group of 6 bikers pull in, leather jackets shining under the sun, patches of Hell's Angels stitched across their backs. The men looked big and dangerous, tattoos covering their arms. Their leader, a man with a long gray beard and burning eyes, got off his bike. His machine was smoking badly, its engine coughing out black fumes. The other mechanics backed away. One whispered, "Don't touch their stuff, man. They're bad news." Even the boss peeked from the office door, pretending to be busy but clearly scared. The leader walked slowly toward Marcus and asked in a deep, rough voice, "You the mechanic here?" Marcus nodded once. "My bike died halfway down the road," the man said. "You fix it and I'll pay whatever it takes." Marcus looked at the bike. He could see what was wrong just by listening to the sound. But he also saw the fear on everyone's faces. He could have said no. He could have walked away. But something inside him didn't let him. He wasn't raised to run from work or from people. So he grabbed his tools and said, "Let me take a look." The biker watched silently as Marcus got down to work. The engine was a mess, overheated and jammed. Marcus's hands moved fast, confident, steady. He didn't say a word, only listened to the machine, tightening bolts, replacing a burned line, cleaning the filters. The other bikers stood in a circle, smoking and muttering, watching every move like hawks. The garage was so quiet you could hear each turn of the wrench. After almost an hour, Marcus stood up, wiped his forehead, and said softly, "Try it now." The leader climbed onto his bike, turned the key, and the engine roared to life, smooth and strong, like thunder reborn. For a second, even the roughest biker looked impressed. The leader smiled just a little and said, "Good work." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a thick roll of cash, holding it out toward Marcus. But Marcus shook his head. "Just doing my job," he said. "No need for extra." The leader stared at him for a long moment, then put the money back. "Not many men like you left," he said, then turned his bike toward the road. The group started their engines, one after another, and thundered away. The garage filled with smoke, noise, and then silence again. Marcus turned to clean his tools. But his boss, Mr. Clark, came out from the office with a strange look on his face. "What the hell did you do, Marcus?" he asked sharply. Marcus frowned. "Fix the bike," he said simply. Mr. Clark rubbed his forehead, nervous. "You shouldn't have touched that bike. Those guys bring trouble. If they come back here, the business could get burned down. I don't want their kind near my shop." Marcus looked confused. He needed help, he said. "It's what I do." But the boss didn't listen. He turned away, mumbling to himself. Marcus tried to go back to work, but something felt wrong. The air in the garage had changed. The other mechanics avoided his eyes. No one spoke to him for the rest of the day. When the sun started to set, Marcus washed his hands and went to clock out. But before he could, Mr. Clark called him into the office. His voice was flat, cold. "Marcus, I'm letting you go," he said. Marcus blinked, thinking he misheard. "You're firing me?" The boss sighed. "I'm sorry, but I can't have trouble in my shop. Those bikers will scare away customers. You shouldn't have helped them. Just clean out your locker." Marcus stood there in silence. He wanted to argue, but he knew it wouldn't matter. He walked out slowly, the sound of the doorbell echoing behind him. The sky outside was red and fading into night. He looked at his calloused hands, still smelling of oil, and felt something heavy in his chest. As he walked home, every step felt heavier than the last. He had done the right thing. He had helped someone who needed it. Yet he was the one punished for it. When he reached his small home at the end of the street, Danielle opened the door, smiling at first, but her smile faded when she saw his face. "What happened?" she asked quietly. Marcus just said, "They let me go." She wrapped her arms around him as he stood there still covered in dust and sadness. Outside, a distant rumble of motorcycles faded into the night. He didn't know it yet, but what happened that day, the simple act of fixing a stranger's bike, was about to change his life forever. Marcus woke up the next morning before sunrise, the same way he always did. But this time there was no reason to hurry. No garage to open, no engines waiting for his hands. He sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the worn floor, his heart heavy. Danielle brought him coffee, her voice soft, trying to sound hopeful. "You'll find another job," she said. But Marcus only nodded. He knew small towns had long memories and quick judgment. Word must have already spread that he was fired because of the Hells Angels. In a place like this, rumors could burn faster than fire. When he stepped outside, the morning air was cool, quiet. But the silence felt wrong. His neighbors, who once waved from their porches, now looked away. One old man whispered something to his wife as Marcus walked past. He could feel eyes following him, the kind that didn't see truth, only stories twisted by fear. By the time he reached the small diner near Main Street, people had already begun whispering. Two men sitting by the counter stopped talking when he walked in. The waitress, who always smiled at him before, placed his plate down without a word. The whole place felt colder than it should. He picked up a local paper lying on the table. The front headline was nothing unusual, but down in the gossip column there it was. "Mechanic fired after helping Hells Angels leader. Business fears gang connection." He stared at it, jaw tightening. It wasn't even close to the truth. But to the people here it didn't matter. Once something was printed, it became real. When Marcus returned home, Danielle met him at the door. "They called," she said. "Your boss sent your last paycheck. He said you don't need to come back." Marcus took the envelope silently. He didn't want to tell her what he read. She already saw the pain in his eyes. He walked to the backyard, sat on the old wooden chair and stared at his empty hands. They were strong hands, hands that had fixed everything from tractors to trucks, but now they couldn't fix his own life. That night, he tried to sleep, but every sound outside made him wake. The growl of a distant bike engine echoed somewhere far away. He thought about that moment, the Hells Angel leader watching him work, the respect in his eyes when the engine came to life. For some reason, that memory didn't feel dangerous. It felt honest. The next few days grew worse. No shop wanted to hire him. One owner said politely, "We don't need extra help right now." But Marcus saw the fear behind the man's smile. Someone else said, "We heard what happened. Don't bring that mess here." Each rejection cut deeper. Danielle started selling small things, her jewelry, old tools to keep up with the bills. On the fourth day, Marcus went back to the garage just to speak with his old boss. Mr. Clark was standing outside smoking, pretending to check paperwork. When Marcus approached, Clark stiffened. "I told you, Marcus," he said, not looking him in the eye. "You shouldn't have gotten involved with those people." "I only fixed his bike," Marcus said quietly. "I did my job." Clark threw his cigarette down and muttered, "Sometimes doing your job means knowing when not to." Then he walked inside, leaving Marcus standing in the dust. That night, as he and Danielle ate quietly, the power flickered off for a moment. In the dark, Danielle reached across the table and held his hand. "Don't let this break you," she whispered. "You did the right thing." Marcus nodded, but he felt a storm building inside him, of anger, of shame, of something bigger he couldn't yet name. Later, unable to sleep, he sat by the window, looking out at the quiet street. A single light shone from the corner store, and beyond that the open road stretched into blackness. He thought about leaving the town entirely, starting over somewhere new. But deep down he knew running wouldn't fix what was broken. As the clock neared midnight, a sound rose in the distance, low and familiar. The rumble of engines. He looked out the window and froze. A group of motorcycles was slowing down near his street. Their lights cut through the night like fire. His heartbeat quickened. For a second he thought they were coming for revenge, that helping them had somehow brought danger to his doorstep. Danielle woke and asked softly, "What is it?" He didn't answer. He just stood by the curtain, watching as the bikes stopped a few houses away. Shadows moved under the streetlight. Then silence. After a few minutes, the engine started again and the group rode off into the darkness. Marcus didn't sleep after that. He kept thinking about the leader's words. Not many men like you left. Something about that voice stayed in his head. He didn't understand why, but a part of him felt that this story wasn't over. Something unseen was moving, and it was coming closer with every passing night. The next morning, he stepped outside again. The town still looked at him the same, like he didn't belong. But this time, he didn't look away. Deep down, he felt a strange calm growing inside him. Like the start of a storm he was finally ready to face. It was early afternoon when Marcus heard the sound again. The deep, thunderous growl of motorcycle engines rolling through the quiet street. He froze mid-step, a wrench still in his hand. Danielle came to the window, worry flickering in her eyes. Marcus, they're back. He stepped outside slowly, the bright sun cutting across the dusty road. The noise grew louder until 5 massive bikes stopped right in front of his house. The neighborhood went silent. Curtains twitched. Dogs stopped barking. It felt like the entire town was holding its breath. The leader of the Hells Angels, the same man with the gray beard and piercing eyes, switched off his engine and climbed down. His boots hit the road with a heavy thud. Marcus stood still, heart pounding, not out of fear but out of confusion. Why would they come back here? The biker looked around, saw Marcus, and gave a slow nod. "You got a minute?" he asked in his gravelly voice. Danielle stood behind the door, clutching it slightly open, ready to pull Marcus inside if things went wrong. Marcus wiped his hands on his rag and nodded. "Yeah, what's this about?" The man reached into his vest pocket. Marcus tensed, half expecting something dangerous. But instead, the biker pulled out a thick envelope and held it out. "You fixed my bike like it was your own," he said. "No one's ever done that for me without trying to rob me blind. Word got around that you lost your job because of me. That's not right." Marcus stared at the envelope, refusing to take it. "I didn't do it for money," he said softly. "I just fixed what was broken." The biker studied him for a long second, then gave a short, rough laugh. "Yeah, you did. That's the problem with this world. People don't know what real work looks like anymore." He tossed the envelope on Marcus's old workbench anyway. "That's for your trouble." Marcus didn't touch it. "I can't take that," he said. The biker's expression hardened slightly. "You're not taking it for you. You're taking it because a man should get paid when he's done right. That's respect." For a moment, neither spoke. The wind carried the smell of oil and dust through the air. Then the biker added almost quietly, "You ever need help, you find me." He turned, walked back to his bike, and gave a sharp whistle. The rest of the crew mounted up. Engines roared to life again. But before leaving, the leader glanced back. "Don't let people make you ashamed of being decent," he said. "You're a rare breed, Marcus. Don't forget that." Then they were gone, vanishing down the road like smoke chased by wind. The sound of engines faded into silence once more. Marcus stood there, still staring at the envelope. Danielle stepped out, her face pale. "What was that?" she whispered. He told her what happened. She looked at the envelope and frowned. "What's in it?" "I don't know," Marcus said quietly. "And I don't want to know." That evening, the town was buzzing again. People claimed to have seen the Hells Angels outside Marcus's house. Some said they were threatening him. Others swore he was part of them now. None of it was true, but the truth didn't matter anymore. Rumors traveled faster than light in that town. Later that night, Marcus sat by his porch with a small lamp on. He finally opened the envelope, not out of greed, but curiosity. Inside was a stack of $100 bills, but tucked between them was a folded note written in a rough hand. "For a man who still believes in doing what's right." He stared at it for a long time, then sighed and set it aside. Danielle came out with 2 cups of coffee. "What are you going to do?" she asked gently. "Keep working," he said. "Just not for them. Not for anyone who can't see the value of a man's hands." And he meant it. Over the next few days, Marcus began fixing small engines again. Lawnmowers, old cars, generators for anyone who'd trust him. He didn't charge much. Word spread quietly among truckers and travelers that there was a man who fixed things honest and fast. No questions asked. But the town wasn't kind. People crossed the street when he walked by. Parents pulled their kids closer. A group of locals even came to his door one evening, warning him, "You better stay away from those bikers. You're bringing their kind here." Marcus didn't argue. He just nodded and closed the door. He knew fear when he saw it. He also knew it would take something big to change their minds. That night he sat on the porch again, staring at the moon above. The silence was thick, but his heart was steady. Somewhere far off he could hear the distant thunder of motorcycles again, faint but real. He smiled faintly. For the first time since he'd been fired, he didn't feel small. He didn't feel broken. He felt like a man who had stood his ground. And though he didn't know it yet, this quiet moment was the calm before something far greater. Something that would soon shake the entire town and prove that one man's honesty could echo louder than the roar of any engine. The next few days turned darker for Marcus. At first it was just whispers in the grocery store or quick glances at the diner. But soon the air around him turned cold with suspicion. People who once brought their cars to his garage now crossed the road when they saw him. The same men who used to share cigarettes with him outside the shop now wouldn't even meet his eyes. Danielle noticed it too. She worked at a small bakery downtown, and one morning her boss asked her gently, "Is it true that your husband's mixed up with those bikers?" The words hit her like a slap. When she came home, her eyes were red, but she said nothing. She didn't need to. Marcus already knew. That evening, while Marcus was fixing an old lawnmower in his shed, a police car pulled up outside. The flashing lights painted his front yard red and blue. Two officers stepped out, one of them holding a notepad. "Marcus Hill?" one asked. Marcus nodded, wiping grease off his hands. "Got a few questions," the officer said. "You've had visitors recently. Big men on bikes. You know who they are?" Marcus looked at him calmly. "They came by to thank me for fixing a bike." "That's all?" The officer scribbled something down. "You know those men are part of a dangerous club?" Marcus sighed. "I fix engines, officer, not people's lives. If they come to me for work, I'll do my job." That's all it ever was. The officer didn't look convinced, but after a few more questions, they left. Danielle came outside, pale and quiet. "It's starting, isn't it?" she whispered. Marcus didn't answer. He just looked up at the fading sky. He could feel it. The town had already decided what kind of man he was, and truth didn't matter anymore. By the next morning, someone had spray-painted words across his fence. "Traitor." Danielle gasped when she saw it. Marcus stood there silently, staring at the black paint dripping down the wood. "Let it be," he said softly. "I'm not fighting ghosts, but not everyone turned away." A few people, mostly strangers from out of town, came quietly to his home. Truckers, travelers, even a young soldier stopped by with a broken engine. They said they'd heard about the honest mechanic who didn't cheat, didn't lie, and didn't back down. Marcus fixed their machines without a word, accepting only what they could pay. Still, the pressure from the town kept building. One afternoon, Marcus received a letter. It wasn't signed. The words were short and mean. "Leave before you bring the gang here. We don't want your trouble." He folded it and threw it in the trash. But inside, something in him began to burn. It wasn't anger, it was disappointment. He had spent years serving these people, fixing their cars, working late to help them. And now, because of one rumor, they had turned him into something ugly. That night, while he and Danielle ate dinner in silence, headlights flashed through the window. Marcus stood, ready for anything. But it wasn't bikers or police, it was Mr. Clark, his old boss. He looked uncomfortable standing on Marcus's porch, hat in hand. "Marcus," he said, clearing his throat, "I didn't mean for things to go this far. You know how folks are around here. They get scared easy." Marcus didn't invite him inside. "You fired me for doing my job," he said. "You made them believe I did something wrong." Clark shifted uneasily. "I was protecting my business," he muttered. "Didn't think they'd turn on you like this." Marcus's voice stayed calm. "You didn't think about anything but yourself." For a moment, they just stared at each other. Clark sighed and said, "If you want your job back, maybe I can—" "No," Marcus interrupted, his tone firm but quiet. "I don't need your pity." Clark looked down, embarrassed. He turned to leave but stopped halfway. "Just be careful, Marcus. Folks are saying things that can get out of control." Then he walked back to his truck and drove off. When Marcus returned inside, Danielle asked, "What did he want?" Marcus looked at her, eyes steady. "To make himself feel better." She smiled sadly. "You did the right thing." That night, Marcus sat on the porch again, listening to the crickets. The wind carried a faint rumble from far away, the sound of motorcycles. It should have scared him, But it didn't. Instead, he felt something strange. Peace. He realized that doing right would never make everyone happy. It would only make the right people remember you. And maybe, just maybe one day, those who hated him now would understand the truth. He looked up at the stars and whispered softly, "I didn't fix that bike to change my life, but maybe life's fixing me instead." And somewhere far down the road, engines roared again, getting closer. But this time, Marcus wasn't afraid. He didn't know it yet, but what was coming next would rewrite everything the town thought they knew about him. The next morning began like any other, quiet, gray, and heavy with silence. Marcus was sitting on his porch sipping cold coffee when a sound broke the stillness. Tires on gravel. A small truck pulled up, its door painted with the logo of the local newspaper, the Midland Chronicle. A young woman stepped out, her notepad in hand and a recorder dangling from her neck. "Mr. Hill?" she called softly. "I'm Rebecca Lane, local reporter. Do you mind if I ask a few questions?" Marcus frowned, cautious. "If this is about the bikers, I've said all I had to say." She shook her head. "Actually, I think you've been treated unfairly. I've been investigating what really happened that day at the garage. Would you let me tell your side of the story?" Marcus hesitated. He'd spent weeks keeping quiet, letting rumors shape his image into something monstrous. But there was honesty in her eyes, something he hadn't seen in a long time. He nodded. "All right, ma'am. You can ask." They sat under the old oak tree beside his porch. She asked him everything. How the bikers came in, what happened in the garage, how he got fired. Marcus told her everything exactly as it was. No drama, no exaggeration. Just truth. She listened carefully, writing every word. Then Rebecca smiled slightly. "You know," she said, "that biker leader, his name is Cole Barrett. He's got a reputation, but he's not what most think. He's been trying to make peace, start clean. And you, Marcus, you fixed his bike when no one else would. He respects that." Marcus leaned back, surprised. "Respects?" he repeated. "That man scared the life out of half the town." Rebecca nodded. "Maybe, but even men like him know what honesty looks like. He told me himself. That mechanic's got more honor than this whole town put together." Marcus froze, staring at her. The words hit him harder than he expected. For weeks he had been drowning in silence, guilt, and rejection. Now hearing that someone like Cole, an outlaw by name but a man by heart, saw worth in him, it was strange and healing. That night, the Midland Chronicle released a headline that spread faster than wildfire. "Fired for honesty. Mechanic's kindness turns into inspiration." The article told everything. The day Marcus fixed the biker's bike while others hid. How he refused money. How he was fired for simply doing the right thing. It painted him not as a criminal but as a man of rare integrity. By morning, people were talking again. But this time, differently. The same neighbors who had turned away now looked guilty. A few even stopped by to apologize. "Didn't know the truth," Marcus once said. "We just believed what we heard." Marcus nodded politely. "People always do," he replied, not with anger, but with quiet wisdom. At the diner, the waitress who once avoided him refilled his cup and whispered, "That story made me cry." At the gas station, someone offered him free fuel for his old truck. The town's heart, once hard and cold, was softening. But Marcus stayed humble. Later that day, a familiar sound echoed in the distance, the low thunder of engines. People near the main road froze, expecting trouble. But when the bikers rode in, they didn't come with menace. They came slowly, calmly. Cole Barrett, the leader, stopped in front of Marcus's gate again, this time with no scowl, no shadow of threat. He removed his helmet and smiled faintly. "You made the news, brother," he said, his voice lighter than before. "I didn't ask for it," Marcus replied. "I know," Cole said, looking around at the curious neighbors watching from behind curtains. "But you earned it. You did right when everyone else hid. That's rare." He took something from his pocket, a small metal badge shaped like a winged skull. "We call this the Brotherhood token," he explained. "It's not for members. It's for men who stood tall when others didn't." Marcus looked at it, unsure. "You sure I deserve this?" Cole's gaze was steady. "More than most of us." He placed it in Marcus's hand, then mounted his bike. "Keep fixing what's broken, man. The world needs that." As the engines roared away, the neighbors who had once whispered against him now stood in quiet awe. Danielle came outside, tears glimmering in her eyes. "It's over," she said softly. Marcus looked at the small badge in his hand. "No," he said. "It's just beginning." That night, as the stars burned bright over the quiet town, Marcus realized something deep. Truth always took the long road, but it always reached home. And sometimes the people we fear the most are the ones who remind us what honor really means. Morning sunlight crept through the dusty window of Marcus's small shed. He was already awake, sitting beside an engine that had seen better days. The world outside had changed overnight. His story had spread, first through the Midland Chronicle, then through social media. People from nearby towns began showing up at his door, some bringing broken machines, others just wanting to shake his hand. "Didn't think a small-town mechanic would end up on the news," Danielle teased, handing him a cup of coffee. Marcus smiled faintly. "I didn't do anything special," he said. "I just did my job." But deep down he felt something stir, a quiet pride, a warmth he hadn't felt in weeks. That same day, a young man arrived at his doorstep. He was wearing a worn-out leather jacket, carrying a bike helmet under his arm. His voice was shaky. "You the mechanic who helped Cole Barrett?" Marcus nodded slowly. The young man smiled nervously. "I'm his nephew. He told me to come here. Said you could teach me something real." Marcus didn't know what to say at first. He looked at the kid, barely 20, eyes uncertain but full of hope. Then he gestured toward the half-repaired engine. "Grab a wrench," he said. "Let's see what you know." As they worked side by side, Marcus noticed the boy's hands were clumsy but eager. "Slow down," he said, gently correcting him. "Machines don't like being rushed. They're like people. You push too hard, they break." The kid laughed, and for the first time in a long time, Marcus heard himself laugh too. Over the next few days, more customers came. Some were bikers, others locals who finally saw the truth. Even those who had once whispered against him began leaving small notes of apology on his porch. The word traitor on his fence had been painted over by neighbors, this time replaced with a single word: respect. One afternoon, a familiar truck pulled up. It was his old boss, Mr. Clark, again, but this time he looked different, humbled. He got out slowly, holding his hat in both hands. "Marcus," he said, voice low, "I read the article. Guess I owe you more than an apology." Marcus didn't move from his chair. "You already fired me, Clark, that's done." "I know," Clark said, his tone almost breaking. "I let fear run my mouth. But the truth is, I lost my best man because I was scared. The shop's empty now. Folks don't trust me anymore. Maybe they shouldn't." Marcus stood up, looked him straight in the eyes, and said, "Fear makes people do ugly things. But admitting it, that takes guts." Clark nodded slowly. "If you ever want the shop back, it's yours." Marcus looked toward his shed where the young apprentice was tightening bolts. The air smelled of oil and warm sunlight. "No," he said softly. "I think I'll build something better right here." Word of his small home shop spread fast. People began calling it Hill's Honest Garage. Travelers stopped by just to take pictures. Kids from the neighborhood came to watch him work, fascinated by how one man could turn broken metal into motion again. One evening, Danielle stepped outside, wiping her hands on her apron. "You've changed this place," she said, smiling. "The same town that threw stones now stands in line for your work." Marcus chuckled quietly. "Maybe they didn't change," he said. "Maybe they just remembered what right looks like." As the sun dipped low, the sound of engines echoed again, but this time it wasn't loud or threatening. It was calm, rhythmic, almost respectful. A group of bikers passed by, each nodding in Marcus's direction before riding on. It was their silent salute. That night, Marcus locked up his tools and stood in front of his house. The porch light glowed softly, and the wind carried the scent of rain and gasoline. He looked up at the night sky, whispering to himself, "You fix what's broken, that's what makes life worth it." He didn't know that somewhere far away, the story of the mechanic who helped an outlaw had gone viral. His name had started appearing in news outlets beyond his small town. But Marcus didn't care about fame. For him, the real victory wasn't in headlines. It was in knowing that his honesty had rebuilt more than engines. It had rebuilt faith. And as the stars blinked above, Marcus smiled quietly, feeling something he hadn't felt since the day he lost his job. Peace. The morning air was cool, the kind that carried the smell of wet grass and oil. Marcus stood outside his small workshop, now painted with a new sign that read Hill's Honest Garage. It wasn't fancy, just white letters on a blue board, but to him, it meant everything. It meant survival, dignity, and truth. As he tightened the bolts on a motorcycle's wheel, he heard the familiar growl of engines in the distance. He looked up, smiling faintly. Danielle stepped out from the house, wiping her hands on a towel. "More customers?" she asked. Marcus shook his head slowly. "No," he said softly. "That sound, that's them." Within minutes, 5 bikes rolled into the yard, their chrome bodies gleaming under the morning sun. The townspeople peeked from their windows again, just like before. But this time there was no fear, only curiosity. At the front of the group was Cole Barrett, the same Hell's Angel leader whose bike Marcus had fixed on that long, hot afternoon weeks ago. But this time he wasn't wearing his full leather jacket. He had a calm expression and something gentler in his eyes. He switched off the engine, stepped off the bike, and nodded toward Marcus. "Heard your place is the best around now," he said with a half smile. Marcus chuckled. "You started that rumor yourself," Cole smirked. "Maybe I did. But I also came for another reason." He turned and motioned behind him. From another bike stepped a tall, nervous young man, barely 20, eyes sharp but shy. "This here's my boy," Cole said, resting a heavy hand on the young man's shoulder. "Name's Jace, he's been running with the wrong crowd. Thought maybe you could teach him something about working honest?" Marcus blinked, surprised. "You want me to take him in?" Cole nodded. "He don't need more rules, Marcus. He needs an example." For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Marcus looked at Jace and said quietly, "You ever held a wrench before?" Jace hesitated, then shook his head. Marcus handed him one. "Then today's a good day to start." Cole smiled faintly, watching his son kneel beside the mechanic. "He's yours to train," he said. "Teach him how to build, not break." Marcus looked up. "What about you?" Cole took a deep breath. "I've done enough breaking in my life. Maybe it's time I learned to fix things too." He turned to leave, but before mounting his bike, he added, "You changed more than my engine, Marcus. You changed how I see people." As the engines roared to life again and the bikers rode away, Jace stayed behind, holding the wrench awkwardly in his hand. Marcus smiled and clapped him on the back. "Don't worry," he said. "Engines don't judge. They just need patience." Over the next few weeks, the garage became something more than a workshop. It became a place of second chances. Jace worked hard, learning fast. Danielle cooked lunch for them both, her laughter filling the air again. The locals who once turned away now came to ask for help or just to talk. One evening, while closing up, Marcus found a small envelope nailed to the door. Inside was a single folded note and a photograph of his old garage, the one he'd been fired from. On the note, written in rough handwriting, were the words, "For the man who reminded us that strength comes from kindness." CB, Marcus smiled, staring at the photo. Danielle came out and leaned against the doorway. "What's that?" she asked. "Something I didn't know I needed," he said quietly. He looked around. His home, his workshop, his student, his life rebuilt from the ashes of humiliation. For the first time, he realized that losing his job wasn't punishment. It was direction. As night settled in, Marcus stood under the porch light listening to the soft hum of crickets. He thought about that one moment, when he chose to help a stranger instead of walking away, and how it had changed everything. He whispered to himself, "Funny how one good act can echo forever." And somewhere on the open road, miles away, Cole Barrett rode beneath the stars with a quiet smile, his son's laughter echoing behind him. The world had changed for both men. A mechanic who refused to give up on goodness and an outlaw who learned that honor can come from anywhere. In the end, Marcus didn't need revenge, money, or fame. His reward was simpler, purer. He had rebuilt what truly mattered, not machines, but people's faith. And as the neon light from his garage flickered softly in the night, the sign glowed brighter than ever. "Hill's Honest Garage, we fix what's broken." It was months later and the seasons had changed. The heat of summer had faded into the soft chill of autumn. Golden leaves danced along the road that led to Hill's Honest Garage, where Marcus worked quietly under a warm orange sky. The small shop had grown, 2 new lifts, more tools, and a steady stream of customers who trusted the man who never turned anyone away. But it wasn't just a garage anymore. It had become a symbol of truth, redemption, and second chances. Travelers passed through just to see the man from the newspaper story, the mechanic who fixed more than machines. And on weekends, kids from the town came to watch him work, their laughter filling the air that once carried only whispers and judgment. Danielle often joked that Marcus was now a local legend. But to Marcus, fame didn't mean much. What mattered was the peace he felt every morning when he opened the garage doors and smelled the familiar scent of oil and steel. What mattered was seeing Jace, Cole Barrett's son, working beside him with focus and pride. The boy had changed. He was calmer, humbler, and more disciplined now. One crisp evening, Marcus was closing up when he heard a familiar rumble of engines approaching from the road. The sound was smoother this time, not wild or thunderous, just steady. He turned and smiled. The Hells Angels had returned, but this time, not as a gang looking for trouble. They came as brothers. Cole Barrett was at the front, his leather jacket gone, wearing a simple denim shirt. His beard was shorter, his eyes softer. When he stopped his bike, he didn't look like a man who led an outlaw crew. He looked like a man who had found peace. "Still working late, Hill?" Cole called, stepping off his bike. Marcus chuckled. "Engines don't wait for morning." Cole laughed, then looked around the yard, taking in the changes, the new sign, the laughter of kids running by, the smell of food from Danielle's kitchen. "You built something real here," he said. "You gave my boy direction. He talks about this place like it's a church." Marcus smiled. "It ain't a church," he said. "But I guess it's where we come to fix our souls." Cole's face turned thoughtful. "You know, I used to think respect came from fear, but you showed me it comes from something stronger. Honesty." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. "Got something for you." Marcus raised a brow as Cole handed him a silver keychain shaped like a winged gear. "It's from the crew," Cole said. "We made it for you. You're family now, whether you like it or not." Marcus looked at it, turning it in his hand, the metal catching the fading light. "I don't ride bikes," he said with a grin. Cole smirked. "Don't have to. You already drive hearts." The two men shook hands, a handshake that carried weight, history and forgiveness. Later that night, after the bikes rolled away and the town lights began to dim, Marcus sat on his porch beside Danielle. The stars were bright, and the wind carried the faint scent of gasoline and autumn rain. "You ever think about how different life could have been if you hadn't fixed that bike?" Danielle asked softly. Marcus smiled at the memory. "Every day," he said. "But then I remember, sometimes the worst days build the best roads." From the garage window, a faint glow of light spilled out. Inside, Jace had fallen asleep over an open manual, his grease-stained hands resting on the pages. Marcus smiled. That kid, once lost in anger, now carried the same fire of purpose that had kept Marcus alive through everything. Danielle leaned her head on his shoulder. "You saved more people than you know," she whispered. Marcus looked up at the stars, his voice low and steady. "No," he said. "They saved me." And as the night deepened, the world around him felt calm and whole. The road that had once brought him shame had now brought him peace. He had lost everything once, his job, his name, his pride. But what he found in return was far greater: respect, family, and purpose. The story of Marcus Hill, the mechanic who fixed a biker's engine and repaired a broken town, had come full circle. The final shot of his story would show him locking the garage door, the sign glowing under the porch light, "Hill's Honest Garage, and where we fix what's broken and build what lasts." As he walked back toward the house, the wind carried faint echoes of distant engines, soft, loyal, and eternal.